Hello, I'm back here to legitimize myself to the YouTube algorithm once again. Now, you may notice, still living in the same place that I always was, and that is because if you paid attention in my video about the car meet and the update I had to talk about how I would be getting out of the military soon and moving back to Tennessee, I ended up using a extension, kind of a loophole sort of thing that we had going on, because I guess retention's kind of bad right now, so they offered it to people. And so I'm going to basically, to make a long story short, I'm going to be living here for another year. So I have another year to finish all the projects I have here, which is great, because honestly I wasn't entirely prepared to move just yet. But anyways, with that out of the way, on to the point of the video. I'm sure you can tell by the title of this video, but today we're going to work on a new project. Now, you may have noticed, if you pay attention to my channel for a while, I have a little bit of a trend going on here. You know, Honda, 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 Honda. Ignore that, I'm just storing it for a friend. Toyota, Toyota. Also just storing that for a friend, ignore it. Mazda, Mazda. And then in my garage I have another Toyota that I'm building for a friend, and I have another Mazda in the driveway that I'm just working on for someone else, not mine. I also had a Subaru for a while. It was a fantastic car. I just wasn't really using it, decided to get rid of it because it was just sitting around doing nothing for the most part, rotting away. But you may notice there's one model that I don't really do a whole lot with. I mean, obviously Mitsubishi, I really don't care about Mitsubishis. But the one that I'm referring to would be a Nissan. I've never really been a huge fan of Nissans. I do kind of like S chassis. It took me a while, but I ended up liking R chassis, like an R32, around the end of the time when I was in Japan. Fun fact, I actually ended up meaning to buy one before I left Japan, but it just sort of didn't work out. Ended up having an issue with the guy who was going to buy it for me from auction, ended up miscommunicating something and missed out on that. But one model that I do really like is a 300ZX Z32. I've worked on one of these on the channel in the past, rebuilding the engine and everything for it. I was going to do a second part to that where I did a manual swap to it, but some issues came up with the build process of that. I'm doing it for someone else, and I ended up basically finishing it, but it needed like some exhaust work, and I never ended up like giving it the chance to do like a test drive and stuff. So the guy ended up saying that he wanted to just take it back and take it to an exhaust shop instead of buying a custom-made exhaust or anything like that. But this one is mine, and I actually ended up buying this one for the manual swap parts to do that swap with, and split the cost of it with him. So I got this for only $1,000 on my end. Had to buy my own transmission for it, which wasn't too expensive. Luckily, I actually found that one in a junkyard and got super lucky. It's like $120. But there's one thing about these cars that I do not enjoy, and that would be the factory engines these come with. The VG30 DE, in this case DETT, for the twin turbo model. And we got this one as a complete car, but if I pop the hood really quick, you'll notice there's no engine in it. This is a shell. The engine that was in it had a timing belt failure and more than likely bent valves. I don't actually even know if they're interference engines. I threw it away because I honestly just don't even want anything to do with that engine. Which begs the question, what am I going to put into this? Now, I was considering a whole lot of things, but I've kind of had a sort of a dream build in mind ever since I decided I wanted one of these cars. And that is a K24 out of a Honda TSX in this, or an Acura TSX in this case. This is a K24 A2 out of an 06 TSX. Pulled it from the junkyard, no idea on mileage. It rotates just fine, and the car obviously got in a crash, so I'm pretty sure it's good. But I am going to do a lot of work to it before I finalize like the whole build. But for now, I'm really just trying to get all the parts I need to mock it up with that transmission and stick it into the car to more or less have just like a proof of concept. But at some point in time, not in the near future, but in the relatively near future, I do plan to make this thing a complete K24 swap turbo engine car with all the bells and whistles, AC, power steering, anything you could want in a daily driver, because I want to build this car not so much as a race car, but more like kind of like a cruiser or a street car. so I'm going to be using factory mounts. Most of the factory stuff is super windy right now. But that's where these 3 boxes full of parts come in. I got everything I need to adapt that engine to the factory transmission, which most people use the ZF transmissions out of a BMW. I chose to go with the factory Z32 transmission because somebody does make an adapter kit for it. And if I use this transmission, it has the factory speed sensor and all the reverse lockout and stuff on it. So I can use the factory gauge cluster as well as pre-made one-piece drive shafts. But anyway, with all that explanation out of the way, let me go ahead and just get this engine off the engine stand and start bolting stuff up to it to get this transmission adapted to it, and hopefully stick this thing in the car today. Actually, I got ahead of myself because the first thing I need to do is do a little bit of a modification to this engine. So this factory oil pan would be just fine if it wasn't for the fact that where it needs to sit in the engine, now that I'm taking a front wheel drive, I don't know what you call that, transverse mounted engine, I think is the right term. Front wheel drive mounted engine basically, and turning it into a rear wheel drive mounted engine. There's got to be a place where this can clear the subframe, and on Nissan, pretty much all the 90s ones are more or less the same. The subframe is just basically more or less a bar that goes across the middle of the engine bay, and the engine is going to sit right around sort of this area. Now I would love to do a rear sump because that's where the factory engine has a sump, and there's a ton of room back there. Obviously, not a whole lot up here. Unfortunately, the way the K-Series works, the oil pump is at the front of the engine, hanging below the timing gears and everything. So you kind of have to do a front sump, whether or not you put the whole sump up front or hang it down somewhat to have a pipe that'll go over the top as far close to the rotating assembly as possible and take suction off the back. But what most people do obviously would be to do a front sump design, unless they can just cut the whole subframe out of the way, which obviously is not really something I want to do because I want to maintain the factory steering rack and all that. So the solution I have to that is going to be in that box. Let me get it out for you. So this is the Toge Factory rear-wheel drive front sump oil pan. It's a custom setup they make mostly for S chassis, Z30 BMWs, and I think FRSs. They're all designed exactly the same. Their website just has different options for which chassis to use it for they say for internal use or whatever. I don't know, whatever reason they want to track what they're being used for, but all of them are designed the same. You put the sump as far forward, honestly, as you can possibly get. So there's as much clearance towards the back as you could ever want, well, or pretty much as you can get. There's really not a whole lot that they can do about that. They still have to have a place to store the oil and let it drain in. But it does have these internal baffles up front, so that oil will hopefully not slosh too far out of this area, and you'll have as much pickup as possible. And whereas the oil pump, the factory TSX or RSX, I should say, oil pump sits right down here and has a little pickup that kind of just comes out, I think, right about here. So what they do under that is they have this billet adapter piece that'll bolt onto the factory oil pump and change it from going this way to actually going forward. So that'll sit right about there, pick up oil from out in front of the engine underneath the harmonic balancer, and again push the oil pan as far forward as possible. That way, when I do go to mount the engine, it'll sit somewhere around this area. Got a bunch of stuff in the way right now though, so I have to clear that out first. Namely, the sway bar, which unfortunately is too high up because again they were originally a rear sump engine in this car. So the anti-sway bar, they didn't really care too much about clearance for, so it sits pretty high, and unfortunately it will not clear the pan if I keep it in place. So I'm gonna have to find a solution for either lowering the bar itself on the mounts, or maybe even getting a custom bar that sits lower. I don't think anybody makes that just yet, but something I can figure out in the future. For now, not the end of the world if I don't have a front anti-sway bar. But I also got to remove the power steering lines because they'll also be in the way. This one specifically, but also that one a little bit. And then this is for the AC. I am going to keep most of the factory AC system in place. I may have to make custom lines for the most part, but this definitely needs to move out of the way. This hard line right here. So I'm going to unbolt that, get it out of the way, remove this power steering hard line, and push those over and take off the front sway bar and get this AC pump out of the way too, because it's not going to bolt to this engine anyway. I'm going to do that, and then I'll get back to you once I finish. And with all that out of the way, see, it's a lot more clear up front now. So much room for activity. It's got the radiator out of the way too, and you can see that's about where I would like it to sit. What I'm afraid of is that it's still going to be too far forward for where the transmission sits, because seeing as I'm deciding to use the factory transmission, it kind of more or less has to fit in the factory position. So if I need to move it forward or back, not really an option, like maybe half an inch at most in any direction if I'm lucky, but you know, more or less, like I said, it's exactly where it belongs. So this is going to need to land like this, or further forward if possible, but doubtful, or I'm going to have to do some cutting to the subframe, which I'd rather not do, but it is an option if I have to. But for now, let's focus on getting the old oil pump and oil pan off of that engine so that I can put this onto it. Alright, with the factory pan off and out of the way, this is the TSX, or you know, pretty much I think all K24s came with this oil pump. This is they called it, it's counter shaft oil pump, or balance shaft oil pump. I think balance shaft oil pump is the right word. Basically, it's got these shafts in it that have balance weights that counterbalance each other, and overall just make the whole engine a lot less vibrating. Unfortunately, as you can probably tell, it's not only massive, but also doesn't have the same capabilities for high revving that the RSX or K20 type pump does, which is just sitting right here. I don't have the new pump for it yet, but for now, like I said, this is only mock-up for now. I'm just mocking it up so I can make engine mounts for it and get it in the car and situated. But for now, I'm just going to pull this out of the way and just have no oil pump in it. Not like I'm going to be running the car anytime soon. So, and with all that out of the way, we're left with this nice clean surface to work with. Nothing on it to get in my way. This is where you would be putting on the K20 oil pump if you were actually fully installing this, which I'm, again, not doing that today. So now I just got to go ahead and put this oil pan on. I'm not going to do a seal or anything like that. It's, again, just for mock-up. Now, in order to mount that transmission onto this engine, obviously it's not just going to bolt right up with the different manufacturers and engine series and everything, but there's a company called G-Force Performance who I decided to go to get my engine adapter, and that's what this is right here. So this plate will mount up to right about there. And then with those mounted on the dowels, I'm going to use this bolt right here, bolt right here, bolt right here. They're all countersunk heads. That way, it'll just leave a flat surface at the end of it. They, of course, provide those. Got one right here. And one right here. They may have noticed that I removed the starter from the K-Series engine. This kit doesn't use the K-Series starter, so there's just going to be the open hole there. And it actually uses the Nissan 300ZX factory starter, which mounts to the passenger side of the transmission. And honestly makes it a lot easier again, because then I could just plug it all right up into the factory system, and the starter should work with a key with no modification. So I actually really like that about this kit. One of the reasons why I went with it. And it does come with a plate that not only blocks off that hole, but it has another hole right here that's threaded, so the bolts that hold this on right here will also be holding the adapter kit to the engine. Alright, in order to actually adapt the K-Series flywheel to the Nissan 300ZX transmission is this custom flywheel that they make that not only spaces it out to adapt for the spacing of the adapter plate, but it also converts it to use the factory Nissan 300ZX clutch. You can use the twin turbo or the NA clutch in this. It has provisions for both. I chose to go with the NA clutch because I don't actually think I'm going to need the twin turbo clutch. The only difference really is that it's bigger and a little more clamping force, but honestly this engine's going to make around like 450 more than likely, and I think a slightly upgraded NA clutch will be plenty to handle that. But this will bolt on with the factory hardware, but I got some ARP bolts just in case. Now in the future I will install these with some blue Loctite, but for now I'm going to put them in dry because I plan on tearing this thing all apart later on down the line. I'm not going to fully torque those right now because it's all going to come apart later, but that's the gist of it. Sits like this, and then the transmission can adapt over that. It has all the provisions for the holes for the transmission. And the starter is geared to work with the NA transmission only, so you can't use the twin turbo transmission, but luckily they're basically the exact same thing. The twin turbo has a slightly larger bell housing. But again, you can use both clutches. As for the pilot bearing or bushing in this case, Nissan uses bushings, Honda uses bearings, but we're going to use the Nissan bushing. This is not a Nissan factory part. G-Force Performance makes this to go with their kit. It works with, you know, obviously adapts the K-Series crankshaft hole to the Nissan 300ZX input shaft stub. I am going to put this in right now because there's really no point in not putting it in. It's not like it's going to be in the way later when I rebuild stuff. Alright, there we go. As for the clutch itself, there's a company called Z1 Motorsports. If you've owned a Z chassis for more than 24 hours, you probably know of them. They make some really good parts for some really good prices, and they have insanely fast shipping times. Like, some people might say like, well yeah, of course they do. They kind of force you to pay for 2-day shipping. Basically the only option, the lowest option they offer. But like above and beyond that, like you can order something on like Friday afternoon at like 4 o'clock and they will somehow get it to you on Monday, if not sooner in some cases. So that's awesome of them. And also, like I said, they make some really good parts. Everyone was recommending to go with the Z1 Motorsports clutches. I think they're going to be a good feel for this car because, again, I want it to be more of a street car, so I don't want a super grippy clutch. I was going to go with an ACT, but like ACT, I'd be paying like 800 bucks or something, probably around there, maybe like or more like 500 to 600, possibly. This was $250 on sale, $50 off still, but like $250 for a clutch that everyone says is fantastic and holds much more power than the factory clutch does. I couldn't pass that up, so I went with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and mount this to it. I had to buy some brand new flywheel bolts because I actually just didn't have any laying around, so got all those now and just get this in place. Did I say flywheel bolts? I was in it pressure plate bolts. Close enough. Basically the transmission is ready to go on now, and obviously if I was doing this for real I would clean up the surface areas of the clutch and the flywheel because there is some oil on there from shipping to keep it from rusting in the box. But again, like I've been saying, this is just for mock-up, so I'm really not concerned about that. When I tear it all apart and put it all back together, I will do that, but for now I'd rather honestly have the oil protection, the protective oil film on it so that I don't have to worry about rust while it's sitting in the car. But let me go ahead and get the clutch fork and everything installed with the new throwout bearing and the transmission. I'll go ahead and mount it on the engine and finally see what this looks like all together. Alright, now I have a factory 300ZX clutch fork release bearing. I would just press it off and put in the new release bearing or throwout bearing. But apparently these you have like a little bit, I guess there's like a little bit of flex you can feel in them or something like that, or maybe they wear out. I don't know 100% what the issue is, but I also happen to have a 04 Plus 350Z or I think Q45 throwout bearing and release fork. Apparently, as long as you use the proper pivot ball, see the 04 350Z one is a lot shorter than the 300ZX one. Apparently, if you use the right one, you can just use the 350Z throwout bearing and clutch fork. Apparently they work exactly the same, they're the exact same size. I've already pressed on the new bearing, throwout bearing, to the sleeve that goes over the input shaft. And then this is obviously a much beefier design that, you know, like I said, apparently you don't get any weird feelings through it, or I guess it feels better overall. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this instead of that, and hopefully that works out. Otherwise, you know, when I take it all apart, I'll just put it on the factory one. No big deal. Time to put that onto that. Alright, now as soon as that stops draining fluid all over my driveway, I'm gonna mop all that up and then see if I can't put this into the car. Alright, well yesterday my battery didn't have enough juice to actually film anything after doing that time lapse getting the engine in. So I had to charge it, and by the time it was charged it was getting so late the sun was going down and there was not a whole lot of light left. But the good news is it does fit surprisingly well actually, and it's actually insanely close. The oil pan is like just barely clearing in a few spots by like literally millimeters at most. So I think I can get away with just not cutting anything on the main subframe, but just kind of hammering in some spots that stick out a bit farther, and that'll be perfect. But other than that, like, the fitment is great. I kind of messed up my cowl lining stuff right here, so I'm gonna have to replace that. Pretty easy fix, luckily, but it's just kind of annoying because it got caught on this thing trying to squeeze it all in here. If I do this in the future, I would probably remove either remove the condenser because it was kind of getting in the way, or just drop the engine in separate from the transmission. Just like lower it straight down. But there's plenty of room back here for the heater core lines, which is great because I want to run, you know, heat. Everyone needs heat in the winter to defrost the windshield and nothing else. There's plenty of room for the piece I'm gonna have to get back here to replace the factory water neck, so it points straight out and so I can go around this way. It's got plenty of clearance for the oil pan, like it's sitting a good like ½ inch at least in any position for the top of the frame rail and the not the frame rail, the subframe and the steering rack. And I was under the impression that the hood was not going to close with the factory valve cover, because I saw someone else on Instagram doing a similar build to mine, and they had to run the Skunk 2 like low profile valve cover, which, you know, I really don't want to run. I think it looks kind of ugly, but it, you know, it works when it works. But luckily, I'll prove it to you here in a minute, but the only spot that hits is like right around here, hits right there, somewhere around there. So if I just chop and take this whole piece out, I'll have zero hood clearance issues, and I'm totally okay with that. I really don't think I need that one little piece of webbing for the hood. But there's plenty of room for radiator fans and a fan shroud. There's plenty of room for the intake manifold and the exhaust manifold. Plenty of room for a turbo downpipe to go right there. And as you can see, I am going to be running Volvo power steering, because unfortunately with where the intake sits on this, there's an idler pulley right here, and then the power steering pump sits right here, and it is right in the way of the intake, so I can't run that. I knew that ahead of time, so I'm not worried about that. Gonna have to run custom power steering lines, probably over the bell housing, or actually probably under the oil pan, because there's so much clearance right there. run them underneath there, go to the electric power steering pump. Perfect. I'm pretty sure this line goes to the factory like cooling lines, which I bent it because I don't really plan on using the whole thing, but I'll tee into this with a soft line and that'll work perfectly. And yeah, like I still got it now. I gotta fabricate some engine mounts to actually like properly mount this in. I just have it on a board and a jack stand right now, trying to get it level and just check for fitment and everything. But I mean, it's going to work, which is awesome. I'm ecstatic about that. This, like I said, this has been like a dream build for me for at least like 8 years now, and I finally can visualize it in person, which is just amazing. But a lot of work to go from here now. I do want to run factory AC like I mentioned before. Unfortunately, TF Works doesn't really make factory components. They make race car stuff, so they didn't have any concern at all for whether or not the AC pump would fit in this area, and it doesn't, because the side of the pan sits way up, way taller than the other side of the pan. So what I think I'm going to do, and I've already done some test fitting to kind of figure out everything I need to move, but it needs to sink down at the inner edge by about a ½ inch, and then I think I'm going to have it sloped down on the outer side. It'll hold a little less oil, yeah. I mean, that's just going to have to happen. I don't think it'll be enough to really worry too much about, and seeing as this really isn't going to be like a track car or really even a drift car, I might take it to the drift event or two just to putt around in it, but I have a much better plan for a drift car later. This one's mostly just going to be a street car, so I'm not really worried about that. So I'm going to have to get the oil pan modified to accept space for the AC pump, and then I also have to notch and box this part of the frame, the subframe right here. There's plenty of room between the back of the AC pump and this mount. I might have to shave this mount down just a little bit, but it's mostly rubber right here anyway, so not a big deal. Not concerned about that. This boxing this out will kind of suck, but I don't think it'll be that big of a deal. Now, as for making the mounts, so I'm going with the rubber mounts, right? Because, like I said, I want this to be a street car. Loud truck. I want this to be a street car, and I have, as most of you know, a K20 in my Honda CRX, like one of them at least, and it has the solid polyurethane Hasport mounts, which are fantastic at power delivery. But that thing kind of sucks on the street, unfortunately, just because it's so vibrating. Like, for the first like month or two of building it, until the mounts kind of broke in, you really couldn't even hear the exhaust from inside the car because the whole inside of the car was just vibrating. I mean, yeah, it's a much less, like well put together car. It's an old cheap Honda, not like a big factory, flagship type car like the 300ZX, but I don't want that to happen with this car. I want this car to be comfortable to drive, even if I'm sacrificing a little bit of, power delivery through engine mounts. I'm totally okay with that. So I'm running factory mounts, cheap stuff off of Rock Auto. It'll work just fine. It's like 50 bucks for a pair of mounts, and I'm using the factory transmission mount too, which for now I have a used one that's slightly ripped, but I'll replace that later. But I'm going to be making custom mounts. Now these plates right here I got from a company called FabBot. I could have made them myself, honestly. It's not really that complicated, but they look good and they're already, ready to bolt on. They come with bolts and everything, so they weren't very expensive. I chose to just go with these, and I'm gonna make the piece that goes from here to here to mount them to the car. I'm sure some Nissan guys are gonna tell me that these mounts are backwards. I'm aware of that. I know they go inwards, but the thing is, they kind of slope up on this side with this weird little hook shaped thing, and I don't really see why it would affect the function of these to flip it around either way. And I don't want to have to avoid this when trying to make these plates, because I think with these I can honestly just make a flat plate that'll just adapt to these, and then I can just make some gussets for strength, and I think that'll work out perfect. So I think I'm going to go that route. This side I'm going to have to like angle this way so it can avoid the water net that'll come out right here to do coolant and stuff. And then so that's how I'll do it on this side, kind of angle it this way, make it kind of curve around, or probably more boxy, but whatever. And then I'll have that side mounted like this. As for the other side, a little more of a tight fit back here because the engine tilts this way, but same thing with the mount. It's going to sit backwards to where it should be, because this way I can slope it directly down. It'll probably hit all the way at the bottom, pretty much right about here, and then I'll just gusset upwards, be a big, you know, like U frame sort of thing. And of course I'll have a little notch at the bottom for water to drain out of so they don't hold water, but I don't think that'll be too hard. So I'm gonna start doing some cardboard aided design to design these really quick. Cut them out of some, I believe this is 3/16 or maybe even, no, it's probably about 3/16 steel, but I'll match it with whatever material I'm using. I'll transfer the cardboard shape onto some steel, cut it out, weld it together, and make sure everything's level so it sits exactly how it's supposed to, and then this engine will officially be mounted into the car. And just to prove it to you, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see where it hits, but it does hit. But so far I can still shut the hood just the way it is. Took a little more effort than usually it does, but there's no obvious like bending on the hood or anything like that, so I really think I just need to notch out that one piece of the webbing and it'll be perfect. All right, a little cardboard aided design, and got some mounts made up. That's how I'm going to do it on the driver's side. It's got a curve around like I said, so I got this little gusset that'll follow the contour of the actual mount, leave plenty of space for where the radiator hose like connection will go. A little bit more gusset right here for strength. I might add just a little bit more small gusset back here just in case, and I'm probably going to continue these a little bit further like towards the actual mount because I don't want this spot to just be flat. I think that side will work just fine. And then the other side was much simpler. It's literally just a plate that comes out, a couple gussets, and good to go. I'm going to angle these in just a little bit to make it easier to pull off the bolts later on if I need to, but I think that'll work just fine. So now I got to transfer all that over to steel, cut it all out, weld it together, and hopefully at the end of the day we'll have real engine mounts and can take the jack stand out from underneath this thing. Man, I forgot how hot thick plate steel can get when you're welding like several feet of welds on one piece, but I got these finished up with the worst welds one particular person in the comment section is going to say they've ever seen in their life, because they've been welding since they were 2 years old and came out of the mother's womb with a welder in their hands. But as far as I'm concerned, they're perfectly good. They've got plenty of penetration, and this thing is solid as a rock. This side gave me a lot more of a fight than the other side because I ended up having to do a little bit of a bend right here to get the piece to come back up because the cardboard, you know, didn't quite transfer perfectly over to what this is. But this is all 3/16 inch steel plate, same as the pieces I got from FabBot, all welded up all the way around everywhere. I still need to drill some drain holes, forgot about that, but not a big deal. Just drill a few holes, it'll be fine. And yeah, this thing, I had to bend this when I already had the gusset off of it onto this side, and I was doing like full-on baseball bat swings with that thing, trying to get it to move just a little bit, beating this in with a chisel sort of end, and got to bend in a little bit, had to contour that, but all worked out. And then this side, a whole lot easier. Didn't actually get me any fight at all, just ended up tacking everything in place and welding it fully, and that is sitting exactly how I like it. Now, moment of truth, I should be able to drop the jack. Out it comes. And with nice rubber mounts. Actually, for rubber mounts, this thing has no play at all. Check up underneath. Yep, still got a gap all throughout here. The oil pan is above the frame rail, which is awesome. I mean, it was going to land like that no matter what, but just the fact that I didn't have to sink it down any further is great for hood clearance. And with that out of the way, this thing is officially K-swapped. Not bad. Pretty sure the hood will still close. That actually feels better than it did before. I might actually have more clearance with the engine actually sitting on the mounts now. Alright, well, good news. You can definitely K-swap a 300ZX. Posted about this on the rear-wheel drive K-swap page last night, and turns out I'm not the only person to actually finish this swap. There's one other guy I know of that I know of now who has actually finished getting theirs running and driving, and they say it feels awesome, which is good news for me. Every other one that I've seen is unfinished so far to my knowledge, so you know, a small part of me was hoping I could be the world's first K-swap, running driving K-swap 300DX, but I'm perfectly happy with just getting the engine in the car, to be honest with you. And fortunately, this swap has already costed me about, like, I think I've spent about around like $5,000 in total on everything so far, including the car. And unfortunately, I still need more than double that to finish the car, which I don't really have at the moment because my money is about to be tied up in another project. So I'm going to be leaving this alone for now, getting it off the jack stands and putting it on the ground, rolling it back to where it was sitting before, and we'll pick this up on a later date. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and put the intake manifold and exhaust header that I have on it right now so that we can visualize what that'll all look like, what the future will hold. And then I got some wheels for this thing that I want to show off. So let me do that real quick. Alright, well, this is a little bittersweet because when I was making the mounts, I didn't really consider fitment of everything after the mounts were made. Just concerned about the mounts and everything and nothing else. And unfortunately, even after a lot of trimming and modification, the exhaust manifold is just sitting directly on the engine mount, and that is entirely too close for comfort for me. Luckily, I can probably just modify that bottom pipe a little bit. It's the only one that goes nearly that far down, so if I can just maybe, honestly, if I could even just like oval it out a bit, you know, just hammer it up, but I'll figure that out when the time comes. But for now, this is kind of, you know, more or less what things are going to look like. So this is the Target Factory rear-wheel drive turbo manifold. This one's for a precision turbo. It's got this nice CNC made collector by, I believe, Elmer Racing that they use, and then these nice stainless bends and everything. Great looking manifold, and I'll be running more than likely a precision 6262 on this setup. I'm kind of considering swapping out the flange and going with a Zona rotor turbo. I'm really liking what I'm hearing about those, but the price is pretty high. If you've ever looked into those, you're well aware of that. But on the intake side, I'm using a K-Power rear-wheel drive intake with the B series. I believe this is a 70mm throttle body. I am probably going to swap that out for a smaller throttle body because it's going to be a lot of response for no reason. And before you think that I'm just spending tons and tons of money on this, I'm a rich man over here just spending thousands and thousands of dollars, I got most of the stuff for this used. So between this and this, I mean, they're worth like close to $3,000. I spent less than half of that just searching for used stuff, you know, over the last, you know, probably year actually of just waiting for good deals to pop up, because the stuff is so expensive, and it's this car could easily turn into a $50,000 build, and I am not wanting to go anywhere near that with it. So part of the reason why I'm not finishing this in the very near future is because I'm still planning on saving up and looking for good deals over time. And what my plan is, more than likely, is going to be to wait until all the Black Friday deals and stuff happen, just save up until that. If I can find stuff used in the meantime, I'll get it. Otherwise, Black Friday deals, Cyber Monday deals, hopefully that'll be around the time that I can afford to finish this build. But for now, I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna put some wheels on it, drop it back on the ground, and roll it back to where it belongs. But I'm just super stoked to have this engine in the car finally, and it looks just as good as I was hoping it would. But anyway, let me get those wheels on. Oh man, okay. So these are the stock wheels. I have this one on this side and this front wheel because the ones I am swapping onto it need what do you call them, extended studs, which I have not taken the time to finish on this particular wheel, but I have in all the other ones. So you can see they're super inset, they look like trash, and we're gonna be swapping them out. And these This is a little bit of a niche wheel that you may or may not have ever heard of. It's also not just like a random one that I went with. I've had these for years, trying to find like the second pair to the first pair that I got, and then I wanted to restore them and everything, so I got them all broken down. Took the faces off, got them powder coated, got the outer lips polished, cleaned up the inner lip, resealed everything, put on brand new gold hardware, and they are looking so fine. I can't tell you how happy I am with how well these turned out. But these are called Riverside Stitch mesh wheels. They're old school, like 90s Japanese wheel that worked bought out, you know, probably back in the 90s. I don't know exactly which date. There's very little information on these out there. These are 17 by 8s. I cannot tell you the offset off the top of my head. I definitely need smaller tires for them, and I'd like to stretch the tires just a little bit, so I'm probably gonna run like some 205s, maybe 195s. I think that might be a little too much stretch. Currently these have 235s, and then the fronts have 225s, 45s, so I'm probably gonna go with like a 205, 35, 17, maybe even a 205, 45, 17, I'm not 100% sure. Luckily I know a guy at the tire shop who will help me out, but yeah, I bought these off of, I bought the first pair off of the guy that I was renting a drift car from, actually, in Japan way back in the day. And I ended up bending one because I drove off track, and I offered to buy them off of him so that he could buy a new pair of wheels to replace them with, and because I liked them and wanted to restore them, so I got the lip fixed, and then, you know, the rest is history. But the rears are slightly different because they have larger faces and flat lips, whereas the fronts I got later on, and they are smaller faces with a stepped lip. So front to back, slightly different, not too crazy, but these also have a short hub on the face, so they sit a lot more inwards. So I had to do spacers, and I'm gonna do about 25 mil spacers. Currently I have 10s on there right now, and I had 15s at one point, and it still wasn't enough, so I'm probably gonna get some like 25s, really space them out quite a bit. Again, smaller tires up front, just slightly, but everything else is all the same. I also ended up doing something I'd never done before, but I ended up cutting my springs just to see what it would look like lowered, because I don't have money for coilovers right now, and you know, not the priority by any means anyway. So probably not gonna ever ride on these springs. Probably gonna put the coilovers on well before that ever happens. But for now, it's pretty low, not too crazy low. And man, it looks so much better on the ground than it does up on 4-jack stands. Even with the ugly stock wheels and all the mess of tools around here. And yeah, I still have the ugly USDM taillights with the red top piece. I'm gonna get that top piece replaced with the black piece, and I'm thinking about JDM tails, not sure yet if I want to do that or just do some custom clears, or maybe even something a little more custom. And I do have 2 exhaust tips for this. This is the exhaust I'm planning on running. It's a JDM brand called like Sebring. That might also be the model, I'm not 100% sure, but just they say Sebring Racing on them. I have both of them. I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think I should run the single exit? You know, being 4-cylinder, it really only needs one. But it still has the placement where I could run the other one. I could have dual mufflers and just do a Y pipe in the middle. So what do you think? Single exit? Keep it looking, you know, the way it is right now, or add a dual exit, dual tip exhaust? Let me know. But there she is. Alright, but I'm going to end it right there. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like if you did. And subscribe if you want to see more. Like I said, it's not going to be right away that I'll get back into this, but in the relatively near future, hopefully by next winter, this could be like a winter build for me. But for now, I need to finish painting my friend's car, which I'm most of the way through with. There's some extra steps in the middle that you'll see in the next video, but I got to get that knocked out soon, and I got to do the last little bit of work to this FC to get it out of my driveway. I'm not filming anything about that because it's just nothing worth filming, to be honest with you. Sub note, Turbo 2 FCs suck. I hate this car. Ran over, and that's my work truck, ignore that. But anyway, yeah, like I said, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.